I've heard that the best amount to aim to grow by week after week is 4%.
Your permission is like to raise your standards
4%
and
might not seem like a lot,
life.
but over
really
time,
hit the jackpot
4%
by most of the world's standards, even though most of you think it's still not enough. What's going to make things magnificent on your terms, not somebody else's terms?
But if you're on an awakening journey and you have recognized that those are there, you have taken the most crucial step to get out of that, which is to become aware that it's actually happening.
This is your last chance. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you found your way here and you're in for a treat, because here we are sharing the top tips, hacks, and tools that our community of conscious women mothers have found to really work to make a difference in how they parent and how they can keep their calm and cool even when their kids are driving them crazy. Each week, I interview guests who are bulletproof moms, badass women running their own businesses on the leading edge of consciousness, who are here to support people in getting the skills, knowledge, and tools they need to put into practice what it is to walk their talk and be conscious spiritual women in the world. Our topics range from optimal nutrition to mindset hacks to tantra and everything in between. If there's a topic or an expert you'd like to see interviewed, drop me a line on my Facebook page, and I'm happy to see if we can arrange that. Remember, if you love the podcast, there's so much more on our website, bulletproofmoms.com, and we would so appreciate that you subscribe, share our podcast with your friends, and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you're viewing this, as it helps us reach more people. Remember, if we talk too slow, you can always speed us up. I know I love to do that, and without further ado, here is our next guest.
No worries.
How are you? Well done on the best-selling book.
I know, right? It's so exciting. We got our book, and I actually went through. I had read your story a little bit earlier, and before the podcast, I was like, which one of those stories I read is Chrissy? And it's interesting because it's actually one of the ones that stuck in my mind when I was talking to people. They're like, oh, I'm like, okay, my story's in it, but your story, is this beautiful journey of feeling sort of empty, like you were designing beautiful things that were part of the problem, moving to creative conscious, which is just like, my brain's like, wow, like I wish I would have encountered that like 5 years ago and gotten really involved when I was doing lots of design work for other people. And I just was like, oh, like, yes, I've worked a lot in sort of like smaller businesses, but to see somebody who's gone from sort of a corporate design role moving into creating really like impact with your design work is like, just like my hero.
Oh, anything's possible. You know that, don't you, Ellen?
Yeah, I do. So I just feel really honored to get to chat with you today, and I'm excited to dive in to learn more about like what exactly.
Likewise. So are we okay to have a quick chat? I mean, or is this so you sort of so this is your thing, is it a new thing you're doing, this podcast thing? Or
I've been doing the podcast since like off and on since June last year, so almost a year. But like seriously, since January, I've been doing about 2 interviews a week, and then I've got some that are sort of in the production queue. And I feel really inspired to break the silence. One of the things that was the most challenging for me in my own healing journey was coming to this. I thought I was all alone. I thought that there weren't any solutions. I thought that it would just stay stuck forever. And so it's like, oh, well, who are all the people who are already rocking those solutions? And if I can help connect people to those solutions, then that's fantastic. And in the process, I get to ask questions from people. Like sometimes I talk to neuroscientists or nutritionists, and I get to go, hey, like I'm kind of wondering about this question myself right now. Like, what's your answer to that? So it's really beautiful for myself in that way too. Yeah.
And is it, the kind of like, because I don't know anything about sound, and is it quite easy to manage, like doing podcasts? And, it feels really sort of scary to me that, you have to do all the tech stuff. And has it been okay?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I come from having done 10 years of digital creative work and marketing for other people. So I have a lot of experience, and I was self-trained in all of that. So I started with like no skills. I just went to marketing events. So it was like, I'm a web designer because I used to make websites when I was 16 for fun, So we come from like similar but totally different backgrounds in that regard, right? And so I just asked Google, like, I'd say, yeah, for sure, I can do that. And then I'd ask Google, I'd be like, hey, Google, can I do that thing I said I would do? Google would be like, well, here's 4 or 5 ways. I'd be like, great, good news. So I have lots of experience with like not knowing what I'm doing and just going ahead anyways, which is great. It's a good skill.
Well, that's why you're a change maker, right? Because you're fearless.
Yeah.
And where in the world are you?
I'm in Michigan right now, so near Ann Arbor, Detroit area, at a family's house. We're out in the woods on like a long country road, so it's been really a beautiful place to be in lockdown. And we were living out of our van before that, so just like traveling around and doing hot springs and working online, and it's like, where's the Wi-Fi and where's the camp spot and all that jazz. So
amazing,
it's been really
living the dream.
but great. Yeah. My dream. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you asked about the technical side of the podcast. It's relatively simple.
Yeah.
It's like Zoom records the audio. I take that, I put it into, I just put it into iMovie. Again, I'm in favor of like massive imperfect action rather than like needing to get everything perfect. So it's like some of the early podcasts, like I was shooting from the back of the van. Everybody else had to go into a cafe somewhere. The Wi-Fi was spotty. It was like dropping out. I just put like, I make these brain training tracks. So I just put like visuals and audios from the brain training tracks when people cut out. And I was like, oh, we're having a magical technical glitch, like, whoa.
Brilliant.
Just sort of like fade over. So I'm not too worried about it. And it's like, if other people are like, oh, it's not professionally produced enough, it's like, they're not great listeners for me then. So
yeah,
at some point I might.
They're not your tribe. Yeah.
It's just like let's do what we can with what we have right now, and when we get better equipment, we'll upgrade. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
you have to be in action.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear more about how. I took some time and looked over the Creative Conscious website. You've got these awards that happen every year. You're honoring people who have done really amazing things in terms of creating social impact as well as beautiful design. Tell me a little bit about how that got started.
So, well, kind of as you already know, because you've bothered to read that sort of chapter in our book, I was just I was working for The Man, if you like, for a big branding agency in London, and yeah, I just knew that what I was doing was destroying the planet, and our future. And so I actually did a course, and it was called a self-expression and leadership course. And in that course, you had to build a community project in 3 months, which was brilliant. And what they did was they got you to sort of like sit down and think, and basically you just wrote down all the people in your community, and then you sort of decided to what project you were going to make. And so I went on the Saturday to this course, and I thought, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here, and I don't know what I'm going to make. And then the following day I went for a little walk or a little jog. I'm not a big runner, but I did something outsidey, exercisey, and it just came to me that we should build a platform where people could use their creativity for good. And we started with doing a global awards, because I think we realised, I say we, I mean at this stage it was just my silly idea, that we couldn't get the creative industry to change, because this was like nearly 10 years ago. It's just stuck in this broken social and economic model of just create more crap and get people to buy it, and then create more crap and get people to buy it. And so our industry didn't want to change, and I'm talking about my industry as being, fashion, textiles, branding, for film, photography, architecture, anything, in that sort of realm of sort of design, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thought, well, because of what Nelson Mandela said was that the greatest weapon that we have to change the world is education, we thought, right, we'll create something and we'll, get young people engaged. And I taught 18 plus is the area that we work in. So sort of higher education, we get them engaged in using their creative superpowers for good. And then they would be like our stealth fighters and go into the industry from the ground up. And while we were also working with the industry from the top down, it was just this sort of idea that we could sort of create positive activists. That's really what we are. We're what we consider ourselves to be: creative, positive activists, mischief makers. And that's how it started. And it was really, if you want to start something, it's all about community. I believe that. Like, you just enroll people. I'm sure you've experienced the same thing yourself, Elena, is that if you haven't got the skill set, you just ask people around you who have. And if it's a great idea, most decent people will go, yeah, sure, I'll help with that. And then suddenly a project's kind of born. So yeah, that's how it started. And it's lots of fun. It's great making mischief in the world, positive mischief, as you know, with your own podcast and the things that you do. It helps one mental health as well. If you're working on purpose-driven stuff, it really helps yourself. You're helping yourself.
Yeah. Now, one of the aspects of your story is sort of this like listlessness with what you were doing before, and then how after starting Creative Conscience, you've activated into that purpose, like you said. How do you feel like moving into that purpose driven? How do you feel like that impacted your mental health?
Oh, massively. I mean, I have always suffered from not anxiety, but depression. I think it's a genetic thing. It's kind of in our family a bit. And actually, if you look at the work of someone like Gabor Mate, who's brilliant, check him out if you're interested in this sort of stuff. Creative thinkers tend to be those within society that will more likely to suffer from mental health, addiction, these sorts of things. For whatever reason. And so, my personal thing was that I had suffered from depression for years, on and off, and I wasn't happy, and I was behaving really badly, and I was being inauthentic, and I was, doing all sorts of crazy. I was addicted to drugs. I'm not proud of who I was back then. I was a mess, basically, and it absolutely transformed, my life and who I was in the world. So, I'm living testament to that. But also, we have now the research and data, because we work with lots of people, that proves this. This isn't just one person, me, going, this works. If you're in service to others, it helps your own being. We have the data that backs this up. And I'm sure lots of other people have data now as well. So yeah, it's good. It's good to use your talent, or whatever your superpower is, for others.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's great.
I can just imagine like some of those younger people who were in, just finishing their design school or just starting their design school, they encounter your program. They already have these like big visions to help the world be a better place, because that seems to be really something that's embedded now in that like 18, let's call it 18 to like 30, something like that generation. They really have this desire to create something different. And so I can just imagine, being in that and stepping into a project like yours, where it's like fully supported to do that, like, being given education and tools to make impact in that larger industry, and how, it's a classic story of, the nurse or the teacher or the creative who starts their new job and is all of a sudden in big industry, and then something about the way the existing system is sort of like, well, and their passion dwindles over the years as they're working on projects that don't light them up, that aren't the project that maybe they had an initial idea to do, or the consumerism of the thing. I know I personally, as a designer, many times was like, I could just step into a corporate design gig and probably make a lot more money than I'm making right now, and probably have my stuff be seen by a lot more people than it's being seen right now, work rather than working with solopreneurs, which is not a global branding type impact usually, sometimes, but not the people I was working with so much, right? But it was just this idea of like, oh, but then I'd be stepping into this like soul sucking, commercialistic, big advertising type thing, which I didn't realize is actually one of the second largest industries in the world after like warfare, like in terms of dollars per capita per industry. It's like war and then marketing, and you're like, hold up, right? So again, it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm so excited. Go ahead.
And it's rotten, right? I'm sorry, but it's rotten. The way our system is structured is really selling people crap they don't need, and at the same time destroying our planet and our future.
Yeah.
So it's really, really wrong, if you think about it. For my sins.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of one of the projects that's come through I'm sure there's hundreds, but like a great example of one of the projects that you've seen move through your process and your company that does make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, the one, and I did a little sort of TEDx talk about this, which was all about the power of creativity and vulnerability. And I talk about this if people want to know more about it. But we had this young girl who sent us a project on teenage suicide and bullying. And that project ended up getting millions and millions of views through an online platform that I think was in the States, a kind of bullying platform. And Elena created a graphic novel, a story. It was beautifully illustrated. It was 166 pages, all done digitally. And it was basically a story of hope, but it was her personal story of being bullied. And that touched the lives of millions. She had thousands of emails from people all around, young people all around the world, saying that project had saved lives and had stopped negative behaviors like self-harm and stuff. And what's really interesting, we see it time and time again, is that if you give people the opportunity to design or create against the things they are most interested in, like, or a personal experience, then the way they design, the way they create, the way they work is fundamentally different than if you said, oh, let's design a new Coca-Cola bottle, or you have to do something altruistic, you've got to design for people in a wheelchair. Well, unless you're in a wheelchair, it's quite difficult to be passionate about that, because unless you've got a family member or something that's disabled. So what we do, and we work with kind of people in businesses now and brands and corporates as well, we get them to tap into the stuff that they most care about. And that's a really sweet spot when you want to create change. And Ellen is a classic example of that. She was bullied as a young girl. She used her talent to design and build and create a graphic novel that changed the world. Had she not been bullied, it might have been a completely different experience for her. She wouldn't have been able to write the story. She wouldn't have been able to illustrate it in such a powerful way. So that's an example. We've had over 4,000 projects sent to us from more than 70 nationalities since we launched. And every one of those 4,000 projects has had social and environmental impact at its core. And we're quite a small community, and we can only work with so many projects to make them real in the world, because it's like a funnel, and the funnel gets quite stuck because we have limited resource. But what we'd love to do is grow that sort of part of what we do, because we're actually a charity, we're an NGO, we're not a business, so we have to sort of rely on funding and stuff. But we'd like to grow that and open up that funnel so we could get more of those people's projects built. From kids that have had, abusive partnerships, or alcoholic parents, or every single topic that you can possibly imagine against every different design discipline. They've created projects. It's really fun.
That's
Really
incredible.
fun.
Yeah, I mean the mental health aspect's obviously really important to me. When you said the woman's name was Elena, which is another pronunciation of my name. I'm just like, was that me in another life? It's like I could have
Yeah,
done
maybe.
that. In fact, like I have a plan
Check her out.
to do that
Check
with my
check
next.
her out.
I will, yeah,
Check
and
her
I'll make sure
project
to share.
out. Check her project out. It's just stunning. And actually, she's from Romania. So she
From
might be, a distant relative or something. You never know, do you? She's an absolutely amazing young woman. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that sounds so good. So you just finished a book. You're running this agency. Are you working on something else on the side? I remember reading that your sort of big design company helps them support creative conscious. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it sort of changed because I left that big agency. That was, ironically, I was living with an alcoholic, and I was addicted to a functioning addict, I would say, to recreational drugs, and also I was addicted to chocolate and sugar, which is now I know is absolutely poisonous to us. So I was working for loads of booze brands and loads of chocolate, sugar and stuff. So the crazy things we do. So anyway, I ended up leaving there, and we now have a really small branding design agency called L&Co, which is B Corp registered. I know you guys in the US know about B Corp because it sort of started with you, which is an ethical sort of fair trade thing that you can apply for. And so we kind of do that. It's my partner sort of runs that. It's very small, and they support the kind of social and not the charity arm of what we do with Creative Conscience. And then it's just all run by people in industry, community. It's a community built, community led organization. So yes, and we do some training and run these awards and have tools and things and go and do workshops for people, and do lots of online stuff now. And we're going to be launching a summer school so that people can do the training and build their own environmental or social impact projects over the course of a few months, and then we'll probably do that online. Yeah, so we're just messing about. We don't really know what we're doing, to be honest. We just kind of make it up as we go along, but it seems to work. And I wouldn't say I've done a book. I think that's a bit we've both been authors in the same female change makers book, which was an amazing experience, especially for someone like me who's dyslexic and can scarcely read or write. I'm hopeless at that stuff. But we are researching actually some of the stories from all these people that sent us projects, and we want to do a kind of a creative, purpose-driven sort of storybook sharing all these magical stories that we've gathered over the years to sort of inspire other people. So that's maybe something that will come up. Don't know when we find the time. Right. You want to change things. There's always something to do.
Yep, there's lots of things, lots of projects to work on, lots of problems to solve for sure. Still lots of stuff left to do, which I think is part of why it's exciting to be alive right now, because there's so much that needs to be done, and there's so many people who are excited about doing it. I think one of the things that makes you and I unique in that is that we're actively working on those projects. There's a lot of people I see who are like, sort of feeling like they're more worried than working on a solution, more concerned or anxious around it than actually taking action. And I think it's important to figure out, what are the ways that you personally can take action. For you, it's this. For me, it's like the podcast and the online course and the book that I'm working on and creating through that. Yeah. What are some of the ways that you keep your creativity alive and flourishing? Like, do you paint? You said probably not writing because you mentioned that thing about dyslexia, but like, what are or is it more like work-based design stuff?
Yeah, my finest thing. I draw a lot. I mean, not normally in my everyday life, but when I'm moving around, I draw. And if I'm, moving in any, although, no one's moving right now, but if I'm moving, I draw every day. So I keep a visual diary, and that I love doing that. I've got drawing books that I've kept for years, so that helps me. But kind of just designing stuff for creative conscience is good. Just designing bits and pieces, designing the courses, designing the systems, designing, the assets, working with lots of people. Yeah, that's how I kind of do that. I've been meditating. Again, that's something that's I'm quite new to. I've only been doing that a few years, but that is just transformed my life. Meditation. I'm so kind of resistant to it for so long. I don't know what was wrong with me. It was just brilliant. So that obviously, when you're in a state of meditation, that can help you, can't it? Be creative. Like you think of, although you should be thinking of your breath and everything else and your chants, just naturally things happen, in your brain that can spark ideas. And then trying to connect to nature. Well, obviously you're in a great situation where you are.
Super blessed.
Nature is good. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, I was just going to ask you more about, like, you mentioned like meditation, and I know a lot of people really struggle with making that a practice, and your face just lit up like it was something really beautiful that was really sustaining to you in your life. So I just wanted to hear more about that, and maybe some of the challenge that you had in terms of making that a practice, and what you're doing that's working for you now.
Yeah, I mean, I think my face lit up because I feel like I've been in kind of half asleep, more than half asleep for the majority of my life. And so when you discover new things like, meditation, or, I try and wild swim, like, if I can get in the cold sea, or I have like cold showers, and, I do all sorts of things now as a daily practice because I had mental health issues. So because I didn't know what to do about it. And, in the past I'd been put on drugs and stuff, and I knew I didn't want to do that. So I just sort of learned and researched. And now I have these rituals. So, I'll wake up, I'll do the meditation, I'll do something called 5 Tibetan rites, which is a series of exercises, and then I'll have a cold bath or a cold shower. And, so there's things that I put in place to help me stay mentally well. But all this stuff is like, it's come about over the last probably sort of 5 years, and it's like you said, you mentioned this word journey, and I know it's kind of overused, but you just got to remain curious, haven't you? You've just got to constantly remain curious, open-minded. And I just think I've spent more than half my life asleep. Right? So what was I doing? What a waste. I sort of sometimes feel slightly regretful, but you can't do that, obviously.
That's a
And
recipe for
again,
mental
we
health
do
challenges.
talk. Yeah, we've put things out on. We've got a little YouTube channel, and we put things out around mental health, and you can use creativity to affect the challenges. And we've done a number of events actually on mental health and creativity as well that have been very sort of successful in terms of engaging people. So yeah, I would recommend, if you've got any kind of slight sort of issues around depression or anxiety, that rituals are really important. And one of my theories around that is because we have humanity, sapiens have lost the kind of idea of any kind of spirituality. And we've been moved into this sort of, the church of consumption. People go shopping now, don't they, on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Friday, depending on what religious belief your family might have been. And so we've all been pushed into this sort of consumption world. And we've also been pushed into the idea of that we're all individuals. And I believe that individualism is killing our society, and worse still, destroying our planet. And so getting back involved, because my parents were deeply religious, very disturbingly, in part of some kind of weird thing called the Plymouth Brethren. I was so anti anything like meditation or any kind of organized religion that I kind of pushed it down. And it's only now that I'm kind of returning to it. And it's obviously not associated with a belief system like that. It's much more just a kind of general idea of the universe and spirituality. But yeah, it's taken me decades to, get there. Sadly. But, better late than never.
Yeah, and that's part of what happens when we have really challenging childhood experiences with strong dogmatic belief systems, right? I don't know the specifics of your journey, but a lot of people are like, oh, my parents were so whatever that is. And so they really push away from it. And then I think it's really common. Like I watched my dad come back to his faith journey in his 50s. I pushed away from our childhood faith for many, many years, and but I think more than age, it might actually be related to the time that we're in. There's so many people who mark sort of like 2009 to 2012 as a window where they started noticing these things, or the last 2 or 4 years where they're like, it seems like, and things sort of open up. There's some interesting theories around the actual planet and our whole solar system moving through different frequencies in the solar system, in the galaxy. It's like we're moving through a higher energy level, like more bombardment by solar rays, and it's like changing the way people think. And you're just like, like that's pretty wild to think about, that maybe, as much as it's our own journey, we're also going through this collective journey as well. How do you feel like that's impacted you? Do you feel like that resonates with your experience and your story?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that we're becoming more conscious. I really hope that we got to wake up, or the whole planet's got to wake up. I sort of think this whole COVID thing is Mother Nature giving us a good boot up the bottom. That we can't keep consuming and living and in this wasteful, awful, terrible, misguided way. We've got to become more conscious, and I really hope that is happening. I mean, a friend of mine who's a yoga teacher, back in 2010, 11, was saying this is the age of Aquarius, and was talking to me about all this stuff that I had no idea what it was about, and I'd just go, yeah. And I still don't know anything about it, but I'm very happy to accept that is happening, and for that to be truth, and bring it on is what I say. More of these wake-up calls. I know that sounds awful and it's terrible if anyone has lost a member of their family and not being able to say goodbye, and all the tragedy that evolves. But unless we wake up, unless we change our behaviors, we're not going to have a future. I mean, that's science, so if you've got to look at big picture. You really do. We've got to really change our behavior, and really fast, but I don't want to dwell on the negative. It's all possible, right? And what you said, where there's an issue, there's an opportunity.
100%. 100%.
We've got billions of issues. Let's make billions of opportunities. I quite like that thought.
Yeah, I love it. I'm really curious, obviously there are a lot of challenges in the world right now. And one of the things you said, which is one of the things that I also operate on, is like, it's challenging, hazardous to our mental health to dwell on the problems, hazardous to the world if we continue to dwell on the problems rather than starting to find solutions. I'm curious what your vision for the future is, a future for our children, a future for our beautiful planet. If you could magically fund all of or add creative juice to all of the projects that you've seen, like what would be possible if all of those ideas that are percolating happen? What do you see in that?
Well, I think there's two things. Firstly, and I'll talk about that, like have education. We have to build these ideas of social and environmental impact into our education systems. We have to stop teaching old, broken economic business models. It's insane, right? So we have to educate. That's the most important thing we can do. But aside that, one of our amazing ambassadors and kind of mentors for creative conscience is a guy called Sir Jonathan Porritt, who was one of the original founders of Friends of the Earth, which is an environmental movement. And he recently took part in an event we did called Creative Changemakers. And he said, you know, we have the technology, we have, as sapiens, humans, we have everything we need. We have the technology, we have the intention, we have the wherewithal, we have the science and the data, we even have the money on the planet to create the world that we need. But the trouble is the money is in the wrong hands. And so I think as citizens, we all have a voice. We can, you know, rise up and say this isn't good enough. We can vote with our dollars and our pounds and our euros or whatever, our yen. We cannot buy the products that are trashing our planet. We can choose to, you know, buy from thrift stores and not feed fast fashion. You know, we all have a choice. And when you understand you have a choice, that's really empowering. And we need civil engagement, which is all of us. We need corporate engagement, and we need political engagement. So we need those three things in order to create change. And that is that we have that. We have a voice, every single one of us, you know, unless we can't speak, you know, but even then we can write posts, or, you know, there's stuff we can do on every level, every day. And that's exciting, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I think when you let that lead your life rather than letting the consumerism lead your life. Like even this last week, there was one of the ladies in the book. I can't remember which one. She lived in Bali and built this Earth ship, or like built this like Earth-based construction. And I was just like, oh, and there was this really strong call from her of, you know, really think about what you're buying. Really think about whether you actually need it or not. Really think about, if you really do need it, is there a better way to go about getting it? You know, can you buy it from someone that's directly supporting the producer of it? Can you buy it from a company that is, you know, ethically sourcing their materials? Can you do it in a different way? And I'm just sort of looking at some of the things I bought last week and being like, well, I'm not doing that, you know, on the level that she's calling me to. You know, I thought I was doing pretty good, but there's definitely more that I can do. You know, and but there are also things that I am, you know, I could sit there and beat myself up around what I'm not doing, but I can also go, okay, right. But I also bought like 35 liters of peanut butter in a big old jug. So we've got, you know, we're using glass jars to serve it in the table, and it's coming from locally produced in the US from a small collective that's doing that. And it's like, they make sandals too, but they're super ugly sandals. I'm not going to buy them, you know, but like the peanut butter I love. The peanut butter is incredible. Yeah. And so it's like, oh, that's like a really simple one. And like, I could buy it on Amazon, but I'm going to buy, I'm having some ethical churning going on around Amazon recently, which is a little unraveling, because I just got excited about the fact that I could get everything from Amazon like really fast, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, but actually maybe really fast, you know, you said fast fashion or fast whatever. It's like, actually, that's not what I want to be doing. So yeah, maybe it takes me an extra like half hour to do the research to figure out which company I want to buy from, but then I can keep buying from that company. They then have a loyal customer that helps them do more of what they're doing in the world. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it's one of those things that we can really, you know, personally we can do that. But then when we start sharing those, when we go, okay, like this is a really great company, I highly recommend, you know, I've done the research, you can buy from these guys and not have to worry about whether there's any guilt or any economical, you know, impact that's really negative. Okay, still probably shipping, right? But the shipping is like, I still go like it's happening anyway, regardless. So if I'm purchasing things at least that are ethical. You made these big thumbs up, thumbs down when I was talking about Amazon. I want to hear your thoughts on that, because I'm still like not quite sure what's happening.
We have to be careful, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not great. No, it's not. They're not great. I mean, none of these big things are great, really. So I'm not going to say too much so I might get sued or something. But yeah, better to buy from people direct. Don't go through those companies. Yeah, if you can, definitely. It is inconvenient, but what's the alternative? You know, you can lie on your deathbed and think, I did the right thing. Like, you know, we can't solve the problem, but we can be all part of the solution. So we might not be able to, and I think there was and Gabor Mate talks about a prophet that was around for about 200 years before Christ, and he said something like, you know, you might not be able to solve the problem, but you can take part in trying to make it better. And I think that you know, that's all we've got, isn't it, as human beings? You want to leave the campsite better than it was before you arrived. You know, having that kind of attitude, I think, is really good. And the more you start to learn, the more you learn. But if you don't know what you don't know, you can't beat yourself up about it, can you? So if you use loads of Amazon products and got everything in the past, it might be because you don't know enough about how they operate, or that, you know, the way they might, you know, behave, and the lack of tax and all the other things that they might have been criticized for. So yeah, I think when any organization becomes that powerful, it's not a good thing, really. But that's just my theory. I don't, you know, we have to learn stuff for ourselves. I can't tell you what to do. It's, you know, it's everything. I'm learning all the time. I only learned more recently because I did Wild Fit thing, you know, from Eric Edmeades, and I learned about the dairy industry. I was absolutely shocked. Like, you know, and we used to do work for dairy brands, you know, big dairy brands. I'm absolutely shocked about how that works, and the food industry, and the sugar, and the hidden stuff. And, you know, we've got, in the States, you've got like something like 7 million people under 30 with early onset diabetes or diabetes. There were none virtually in the 70s. And you think, this is insane, what we're feeding people. You've got people who are morbidly obese, and yet they are malnourished. What kind of world is that? You know, so once you learn this stuff, I didn't know that. Now I know it. I can go, wow, you know, what's in this packet of whatever? And you become conscious. So you're constantly learning and constantly becoming more conscious. Mm-hmm. Then you can just not preach to people, because that's not going to help, but you can just say, hey, you know, and people will notice maybe that you look better, or you feel better, or, you know, you put little things out there in your social media or whatever, and then what we need to hit is a kind of critical mass where a tipping point where everything shifts, and we're not there yet. But the more conversations that you're having, for example, with this podcast, amazing, congratulations on that. The more people engage and write and create and build businesses and social enterprises, we'll get to that tipping point. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, we're very much
it's
like
all
in
up
process.
for grabs.
Sorry?
It's all up for grabs.
Yeah. And I think, you know, especially in this time of COVID, it's like more and more people are like, whoa, like something's not working. You know, there's so much information circulating around like what big industry is trying to accomplish, which doesn't seem to be in our best interests. And so, you know, looking to how do we support smaller industry? How do we support you know, individuals? How do we support maybe industries that are in that middle size that are really, really committed to doing good work and supporting people? It's like, there's so, sometimes it does feel overwhelming, like there's so much to do. But then I remember, you know, like every single lady who's in our book has a personal mission that they're actioning towards, and there's 50 of us, and how much, you know, how incredible was it to be part of that? Every single, and then I think about like I've been in this industry helping building websites and stuff for 10 years for people who were coaches and healers in, you know, sort of the personal development, diet, nutrition industry. all of them with powerful voices. I touched 140 businesses, but I'm only one person. How many other people are there out there in my role who are also helping other people? There's literally like tens and hundreds of thousands of them. And I think a huge part of the problem is, there is this sense of like the individual versus the corporate collective. And I think a huge part of our work now in this time, like 2020, is realizing there are human collectives that are doing great work. And there is, big industry, but we can level that playing field because there's physically only a certain number of human beings on the planet. And a lot of them have woken up. A lot of them are actively on that mission. And it's really exciting. I'm about to get into more political activist stuff in this next couple of weeks because I'm originally Canadian. I just happen to be in the US right now because I can't go back to Canada, or I could, but I can't bring my partner with me because of what's happening with the borders right now. And it's like, well, I guess I'll stay here so we can be together. We're in a beautiful house in the wilderness, so it's like we're where we want to be, which is in nature, right? Where that nature is sort of a little bit immaterial. But there's this, like, in Canada, there's petitions going on, like tax the wealthy, tax the 75 wealthiest families in Canada. You'll generate $30-some billion. Use that to support everybody else's lives. Once those people aren't, in that fight or flight of like, can I pay my bills this month? What's possible in terms of their creativity? Because it is really hard to be creative when you're trying to figure out if you can eat next week. Like, the fight or flight really does like dampen that creative aspect, which I think is where a lot of people are, which I think is why there's a lot of, well, I can't do anything about the problem because I can't even handle my own life. And, I know in my own journey, I was always somehow able to keep an eye on that big picture, and it was needing to support that bigger picture that sort of kept my personal life, like, it's like whatever, in that fight or flight when I was still really struggling with my mental health. It was like this idea that there was something bigger in the collective, something bigger that we could work towards, that really kept me going. And so it's like, I know from personal standpoint, like, that works. Keep focused on the big picture, keep focused on the fact that there are so many people who have solutions, keep focused on creating that. And that helps on a personal level. You spoke about that earlier, how being in that creativity and looking for solutions is really, really helpful, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think fear, which is, I hold our media responsible for the fear that we feel. And, our media, it's weird, isn't it, about the news and coverage? It's all darkness. We've got actually a publication in the UK that started and is taking off, and I know you've got some probably in Canada and the US, and this is called Positive News, and it just focuses on all the great stuff that's happening in the world. Mm-hmm. But, you can control people better if they're in a state of fear. And right now there is a state of the unknown, and that, not knowing what's going to happen, that creates fear and anxiety, and that just shuts us down as individuals. If you're in a state of fear, you can't really do anything, so it's not good. So I guess as communities, we can support each other and look out for each other. And actually, during this particular pandemic, you have seen that. I'm sure you've witnessed that, how communities have been looking out for each other, and it's it's sort of quite hope-filled to see that behaviour, and you see what's possible when we think about each other and not ourselves. We always say that great things happen to brave people. And so it's really important that we're brave and we step out of our fear. That's when we learn the most as well, isn't it? When we do new things, when we challenge ourselves. When we're just in a safe place, we don't grow and we don't learn, and we just sort of stagnate. So yeah, we need to be brave and in action and full of possibilities. And yeah, it's a very interesting time for humanity. I hope we learn by this and move forward. Yeah.
So many potentials, so many opportunities, and there is a lot of like grassroots stuff happening. I know I was looking at some of the activism stuff that's happening in the world right now around racism and around people who are really struggling because of COVID, their jobs aren't happening. And I read this story about an apartment complex where a police officer called in that the elderly and the children in the building were starting to eat out of the dumpster. And it was just like, it got posted on Facebook, and within, one or two comments, they had started, like, some women had come in and been like, wow, this can't keep happening. They'd arranged food delivery for that day. And by 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th comment, they had arranged funding for ongoing food delivery to these people. And you're just like, wow,
Brilliant.
yes,
Brilliant.
that's the kind of action that we want to see. And I really do see a lot of it driven by women. I see a lot of it driven by, this hopeful female heart that says we can do something different. We need to take care of other people. It's not about competing with each other. It's about collaborating. If our projects were somehow doing the same thing, that's a cause for celebration, not a cause to, like, beat up on each other, right? So you were going to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned women and the kind of Jimmy Carter did an amazing TED talk on gender inequality. I recommend you watch it. It's just fascinating around how that has really disrupted our world. The fact that, women are not equal to men, it's really shocking. And then I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. She was quite down about, the situation here in the UK with Brexit and Boris, and then you've obviously got the Donald, as we call him, and then what's his name down in Brazil, and all the rise of these kind of patriarchal, right-wing sort of ideas. And another friend of mine, a guy called Mark Shaler, a very wise guy, he said, Chrissy, it's like a dying lion. And a dying lion is the most dangerous type of lion. And he sees this as, this is where we're at in the world right now. The lion is dying, and it's angry, and it's pushing all it can. And I think now is definitely the moment for women, in particular female leaders, to rise up and to be heard and be braver than ever. And it's really not easy, if you look into Brene Brown's work around vulnerability and how men are expected to be like this and women are expected to be like that. But we have to rebalance our world, because it's not balanced, and that's part of the problem, is that it isn't equal, and we need both male and female energy to make the world better. So yeah, I hear you. And we've just done this book together with all these other amazing women. I really struggled with doing the promoting of that. It's not, maybe it might be a British thing, or even in Canada you might not. I hated sticking that stuff out. I found it really unpleasant to do it, but I knew I kept on having Brene Brown in my head going, you have to be vulnerable, but it's not how we're taught. It's not who we are quite often, but it's definitely our time. And for men also to support men who support us. It's not just us versus them, it's about us all in it together. Yeah, we do need female energy.
Yeah, I think there can be sort of this pushback towards men because of what's happened. And I think highlighting men who are really supportive, like, for example, like JB and Peter, like, JB wouldn't be able to be who she is in that space if Peter wasn't doing so much of the technical stuff. And even when I was, like, co-hosting for pieces, I was just like, oh, this would be a good time to have that link in there. And I was like, hey, Peter, can you pop the link in there? It's like 4 seconds later, and she's like right there and right on it, right? And I was just like, oh, like part of me just like melted and softened. It was like, yeah, that kind of support, like that level of like, hey, I need this, boom, right there. Like that's what we need. And if we could get our sort of masculine systems to support, the feminine uprising that's happening and saying, actually, we want to reroute, the amount of commerce that we're doing, and we want to do it this way instead. We want to reroute what's happening and do it this way instead. It's a really powerful way to bring those forces together in a healthy way. Yeah.
And I think it takes a very special guy to, support a female partner, you know, whether that be a sister or a partner or a lover or husband or something, because that's not the way society says it should be. And so it's tough for them, and we need to make that okay for them to support us as well. Like, I know my own partner is sort of, he teases me because when we do events and things together, I'm kind of the big gobby one doing all the bossing about, and he's sort of there supporting me. He says he's like Prince Philip, you know, the Queen and Prince Philip. He just sort of laughs and says, "Oh, I'm just Prince Philip." But yeah, because it's not easy. It's not easy for him. You know, I get it. It's funny. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I did an amazing film that had been created from an event. I think it was filmed in Hawaii, where they had got, and I can't recall the name of it, but they had got Indigenous leaders from all around the world to meet and share stories and their sort of belief system. And they created a really lovely film. And in there, they also mentioned, you know, the rise of sort of female empowerment. And I think we've got a lot to learn from Indigenous people in the so-called civilized culture that we now have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find it fascinating that they have, you know, for example, in lots of Indigenous tribes, they will have like up to 7 different words for gender, whereas we just kind of have like, you know, homosexual or bisexual, you know, we have about 3 things or 4 things, and they have up to 7 because it's such a spectrum of different types of, you know, genetic makeup. You know, how can we possibly say we're just this or that? And that, I think, is very powerful learnings. There's so much we can learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting time.
You saying that reminds me of a photo I saw many years back that really stuck with me, and it was a picture of 4 Indigenous like shaman leaders, and they had labeled them as like man body, man spirit, man body, woman spirit, man body, or sorry, woman body, woman spirit, woman body, man spirit. And looking at their facial features and their structures and how they held themselves and how they dressed themselves, you could really, really see that. You could really see how, like, this was, you know, sort of the epitome of like testosterone, strong man. And then the other man was this epitome of like a much softer, but like so wise and so kind, like somebody who you'd be like, my life just broke. I just want to curl up in a strong man who knows what's happening, his arms, you know, like you would look to them for different sort of leadership. And it's like, wow, like how interesting is that? And we think about different people that we look up to and how do they bring those qualities forth. Yeah,
Interesting times, lots to learn, lots and lots to learn.
Yeah. I've totally loved our time together today. I just want to be respectful of our agreement around what we sort of said we were going to do in terms of time. I'm curious if you have any sort of last words that you'd really love to share of inspiration with women, particularly mothers, or particular women who are creative in this case, that are looking for ways to use their creativity for good in the world.
So take action is the first thing. Like I mean, we're running a summer school actually, and we run workshops if anyone's interested, where we can take you through a process of using. And we did one at Mind Valley actually University last year, which was really fun. We had about 65 people. We took them on a journey of like mashing up a complaint with something that you love. And that's this kind of doesn't feel right, but you know, like we talked about Elena's story about being bullied and then creating this graphic novel, and that's where I would start if I were you. If you want to create change, look at what you love against what isn't working and put those 2 things together. So that's kind of my advice. And then second thing is get other people involved. Ask for help. You know, none of us will have the legal expertise or the design expertise or the kind of, you know, figures and numbers or business. None of us, or the tech, none of us have all of that. So look at what it is you want to do and then ask for help. and you will find those people in your community. And then just build something, just like we've done, like you're doing. You said to me at the beginning of this call, sometimes when you started your podcast, it was all a bit clunky and it wasn't perfect. Absolutely agree with you, Elena. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just do it. Just do it. Get something out there and have fun. Even when you're dealing with serious issues, it's really important to create the joy around that and the magic that can happen. So that's my advice. Sending you loads and loads and loads of love, big love, all the way from here in Blighty over there to you in the States. And let's stay in touch. If anyone wants to get involved, get in touch with us. We're here to help. We're an NGO. You can just write to us at hello@creativeconscience.org.uk. If you want any support, we're here to support you. We've got a big community. And let's have fun and let's change the world. So that's my parting thought.
That's
Thank
fantastic.
you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. I super appreciate getting the chance to talk with you today.
Remember, if you love the podcast, there's so much more on our website, bulletproofmoms.com, and we would so appreciate that you subscribe, share our podcast with your friends, and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you're viewing this, as it helps us reach more people. Even if I've tried to do this in the past and it's been unsuccessful or I've given up and I felt like I could never change, I can completely change that.
Follow your breath and you contract those intrinsic muscles. As you follow your breath and you bring that breath all the way up to that pineal gland and you hold your breath.
One of the most valuable concepts that I personally learned is that in order to reach the level of success, self-confidence, and prosperity that you want, you have to brainwash yourself. Yes, brainwash yourself. See, either way it goes, you're going to be brainwashed. But the question is, who's doing the brainwashing?
Hey guys, thank you so much for being on that journey with me. It's been a work of love to create such a journey, and I invite you to come and be part of the tribe, come be part of the experience, and get your full access pass so that you can see all of the things that are being created, experience all of the things that are being created. This is literally just a demo and just a toe in the ice of what is available in terms of audio and content that is highly programmable into your subconscious in your highest possibility. And so I thoroughly encourage you, if you are into personal development, if you watch this thing all the way to the end, there's clearly something here for you, and I want to have you as part of the tribe. So I love you. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you on the other side in the tribe.
Sugar addiction and addiction in general, and she filled me with this beautiful knowledge and power that I always knew was inside me, but just needed, I think, a little bit of coaxing to come out. I can actually tell that there's been a big shift, and it's not just superficial. It's on a fundamental level. My thought processes are different, and that's such a beautiful gift, because I've been working really hard to get rid of this sugar addiction, as I'm sure a lot of people are, and I lost a ton of weight, and then I hit that plateau, and there's that one thing that's super hard to beat, and thanks to Elena, I think I definitely have it. This time I'll beat the addiction to sugar.
I'm on a big mission to end family trauma in this generation, and so I'm working with conscious moms to create a powerful change where we can become bulletproof, where we have no triggers, where our children cannot touch us no matter what they throw at us, so that we can be the kind of moms that we needed and the kind of moms that we want to be for this new generation, so that we can end rape, we can end trauma, we can end neglect, we can end sexual shame, we can end consumerism, we can end screen addiction, we can end all of these things by how we choose to parent and how we show up in the world. So I invite you to be here on this journey with me, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the other side. So get your name and email in that box and join me on this journey. It's going to be an incredible 7 days where you are guided every day to understand how to create better habits, how to not give up, and how to implement the 60-second hack to rewire your brain so that you know that no matter what's happening, you'll come back to a loving place fast. I love you. I'll see you on the other side.
Moment and your future
but also your perceptions of your past. So that you look at your past and your life and you already see all of the places where you have integrated this change and had been previously unaware of it. Thank you so much for being here today with me. And you've done great work today, not only for yourself, but for our collective consciousness. I'll see you here tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.